Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Carney, and today I'll be examining the role of social media as it pertains to journalism. Social media is a relatively new development to our society, and journalists are still learning the best ways to use it to their advantage. There are already hundreds of different social media sites, each with a different unique purpose and direction to engage users to display information. So what role do these sites play in the world of journalism? Well, the biggest factors in this conversation are immediacy, reliability, accessibility, and consumption. And after taking a look at these categories as well as some popular social media sites, I intend to show how social media may be rendering the role of journalism obsolete. So according to the eBusiness Guide, the most popular social media sites as of October 1st, 2016 are Facebook and YouTube, who each generate over 1 billion unique monthly users, as well as Twitter, which generates over 310 million. Now, these numbers are so high that major media outlets couldn't even dream about them. They're unfathomable. But according to analytics company SimpleReach, which handles Facebook trafficking data, the website drives up to 20% of its traffic to news sites. And that's pretty big for new media, as a Pew Research study shows that about 30% of adults get their news from Facebook. That's a pretty significant chunk of adults. Not only that, a separate study conducted by Pew showed that in 2008, the internet surpassed newspapers as a primary source of news, as 40% of those surveyed said they looked online first for all their national and international news. And that number leaped up from just 24% in 2007, likely the cause of the 2008 election coverage, something we can relate to now. But it's not hard to figure out why the rise in online media consumption is happening. We live in a society today where people are attached to their smartphones, everyone's constantly plugged in. That creates a sort of expectation that they will see something new every single time they look at their screens. So now it's up to journalists to deliver on that expectation, all while remembering the key parts of their profession. But instead of being timely, journalists now must be immediate. Instead of being accurate, users are settling for reliable. And instead of writing stories for print and calling it a day, journalists must generate content for online and be available for user interaction. So let's break down what some of these terms mean. In the past, and still somewhat in the present, major news outlets covering presidential debates would stand by until the debate concluded to give insight, analysis, and updates. In today's world, it's no longer necessary to wait. People can watch the debate online with their phone or computer in front of them and scroll through social media sites to see insight, analysis, behind-the-scenes updates, and now even fact-checking. Major media outlet NPR just this year figured out a way to filter the debate into their software so they can live fact-check everything the candidates are saying as they're saying it. And this completely changes the way media is consumed, as anything and everything people might be interested in now shows up right when they want it. And this creates an issue for journalists because the importance of releasing a story best is now being trumped by the importance of releasing a story first. And as they strive for this goal, sometimes it impacts their work in other ways. And that brings up the issue of reliability. Unfortunately, journalists aren't the only ones that can use social media. The digital age has brought about a movement of citizen journalists. And these citizen journalists are just everyday people using their advanced technology to become the first responders of news. Jennifer Alejandro touched on this in her Reuters Institute Fellowship paper for the University of Oxford, and she brought up the British Broadcasting Network's coverage of the 2005 London bombings. So she said that within 6 hours of the London bombings, the BBC received more than 1,000 pictures, 20 pieces of amateur video, 4,000 text messages, and 20,000 emails about the event, to the point that their evening TV broadcast the next day opened with a package entirely made up only of edited viewer videos. That's pretty insane. And while this is incredible, it also brings up a scary thought that journalists might one day no longer be needed. If the people are capable of generating their own content and reporting their own details of a story, what do they need us for? That brings us to accessibility. Journalists must make themselves and their digital content easily accessible in today's digital world. So linking and sharing their content on social media is just the tip of the iceberg now, as journalists are expected to build and expand their audience by interacting with them. Beat writers for sports teams, for example, tend to take the time out of their day specifically to answer reader questions about the players they cover. This sort of relationship is huge for a journalist to establish trust amongst their readers, which will inevitably make them a go-to source above other citizen journalists and rival reporters. And this brings us to social media law. For some reason, we can't talk about how libel in the First Amendment affects social media without talking about Courtney Love. Love has been at the center of more than one Twitter libel, also known as Twibel, cases in recent years. Most recently, in January 2014, she became the first person to go to trial over a libelous tweet and be cleared by a jury. And this is a big deal because it establishes Twitter as a publishing platform in the eyes of the law. So back in 2010, Love tweeted that her lawyer at the time, Rhonda Holmes, had been bought off because she refused to help her take legal action against the managers of Kurt Cobain's estate, her late husband. And she was sued on the grounds that the tweet caused irreparable damage to Holmes' business name and reputation. The jury, however, eventually ruled that there wasn't enough evidence to prove that Love knew the defamatory statements she made were false, which meant she could not be found guilty of libel. And, this raises several questions and concerns for the state of journalism on social media. So just as journalists must be careful about what they put in print, the same rules apply to what they put on social media. Reporters can and will be sued for certain things that they tweet or post, so while they are trying to be first, they must also be sure they're being accurate and factual. Journalists also must be wary of what other people, or citizen journalists, post online, because if they mistakenly take something as fact and share it themselves, they can face the repercussions of that as well. And journalists must also remember that unlike other social media users, they represent an organization, and the things that they post can reflect negatively on both themselves and their employers. So while there are several advantages and disadvantages to journalists using social media, one thing is clear: it is much harder to be an actual journalist using social media than a citizen journalist. However, these other users can be crucial in helping reporters with a story if the proper precautions are taken to ensure they are reliable sources. The question now is, how can journalists prevent these citizen journalists from taking over the media? And that's something we'll take a look at in our next lecture. So thank you all for tuning in. I hope you learned something. Feel free to reach out with any questions at _Aaron Carney on Twitter. And keep on posting, because you never know what might be important out there. Thanks again.